Hey, yogis. Welcome back. It's a second live in one day. Who would have thunk it? The Alkali Yogi is making her way back into life and society and the online. Um, if you have been on my channel or on my journey, either on Instagram or here, and thank you those of you that have been supporting me, then you may have noticed that I have been MIA, especially on the Insta, but also on the YouTube. It's just that I've not been as consistent with the YouTube as I need to be. And that's because I've been going through my own healing journey and detoxification process. You could probably see that I'm a little bit well, not a little bit, but significantly slimmer. And that was because I got rid of a lot of waste, but I will get into that at a future time. My reason for coming on for the second time today is because I just really want to share a really great article that I was reading earlier that's kind of touches upon my first YouTube live earlier, where I spoke to you all about staying away from processed sweeteners, which lead to and things of the sort. And wouldn't you know it, Dr. Mercola released a great blog today, a great article, and I wanted to read directly from this article. And then I'm also going to play something. As you can see, I have a video already queued up and ready to go, taken from the town hall with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., I believe just a few nights ago. Side note, is this bothering Big Tech, having to give him a voice now that he's running for office? Because, the censorship has been real over the last few years. I mean, real. I didn't realize how bad censorship was actually in the West, but now my eyes are wide open that if you don't have an opinion that is congruent with that of the blue side, the liberal side, whatever you want to call it, that it simply must be put out like a flame and just silenced and hushed. But I heard JP Sear say something once, which I thought was really poignant, and that is, if you have, you know, if your argument has validity, then you will argue it. And if your argument has merit, again, then it will stand on its own merit. So when you silence other voices, especially attorneys who are full-time going against, corporations that have very long criminal histories, such as that of Robert F.K. Jr., right? Look into what he does. He's an attorney that goes after a lot of these corporations that have been benefiting greatly and also supporting and I'm sure lobbying and paying off whomever they need to in order to keep a certain narrative going, yada, yada, yada. And again, none of that is in line with you have something to stand on. If you have something to stand on, you'll stand on it and you'll invite debate and you'll invite the opposition and you will have a healthy discourse, because that's what's needed to inform people of both sides so that people can make the best decision that is best for them. So silencing is just, it's not the solution. And you've heard me say this before. And, if you're going to go off the argument of, oh, but there's hate speech and yada, yada, well, listen, I'm a Black woman. So as the kids would say, miss me with that, okay? And let's just get cracking and have honest, in-depth, relevant discourse and conversation so that we can create opportunities for solutions. We can come to solutions together, maybe find a middle ground. But this, if you're not on our side, then you're completely wrong, is nonsense. It's absolute rubbish. And we've seen it time and time again play out. When you look at history, it doesn't ever favor, and I'm going to say this again, historically, it does not favor the ones that were doing the censoring. History has not been kind to those that do the censoring. Hence, history has not been kind to those that silence. So there's that. All right. Getting on with why we're here today. It's official. The WHO, which is a very interesting entity and organization in and of itself, and definitely not one that I would rest my laurels on or put my trust in, but nevertheless, I digress. They have declared aspartame a carcinogen. Dun, dun, dun. Remember when we were making that delicious vanilla syrup this morning? I told you stay away from the fake stuff. Sorry if you're hearing this seat creak and make noise. I don't know why. Maybe I've sat on it for too long. It's very possible. This is, after all, where I broadcast from, but it's also where I study and read. So. Anyways, carrying on. Yeah, so like I was literally saying just a few hours ago, stay away from the fake stuff. It's not working for us. It's really not, because in this country, this very country, which is an amazing country, fruitful country, a country that has provided the world with so much great stuff, but with every positive, there's going to be a negative. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. It's just laws of the universe. There's always going to be polarity and duality. For every yang, there's going to be a yin. For every rise, there's going to be a fall, right? So aspartame and the fake sweeteners, that was not one of this country's finer moments. And in fact, we see evidence of that because, again, I'm a holistic practitioner. And I can tell you, I've seen the science. This is the sickest population on the planet, also the most obese. Other countries that don't have fake sweeteners and that don't avoid healthy, clean fats do far better than we do in terms of they don't suffer from obesity nearly as much. You know, they tend to have longer, healthier lifespans. They don't tend to have as many issues, whether they be mental health disorders or autoimmune disorders or just general, cancers and et cetera, right? So it's prevalent here because, unfortunately, our food, which is, in the words of Hippocrates, our medicine, is in fact killing us. And aspartame is not a food, although it's been sold to us as that by more of these entities that we are meant to trust, such as the CDC and the FDA, who could never be bought out. So what if they get royalties? 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, right? Let me get to this article, yeah? So, the World Health Organization has finally gotten around to declaring the popular artificial sweetener aspartame a potential carcinogen. The ruling comes from sources within the WHO's International Agency for Research on Cancer, who said aspartame would be listed as possibly carcinogenic to humans in July 2023. Dr. Mercola says, I warned about aspartame's cancer-causing potential on my site over 25 years ago, and in my best-selling book, Sweet Deception, Why Splenda, NutraSweet, and the FDA may be hazardous to your health. That's actually the name of the book. In 2006, and in an article I wrote for the Huffington Post, it's since been deleted, but you can see just how long this danger has been known. By the way, if you're wondering why the Huffington Post might have deleted this article, which is quite pertinent and important, and from a doctor, well, look at who owns it. It's the same individual that owns Amazon. And there's nothing wrong with a person having that much power, such as owning a huge major publication like that is read around the world and more. It's fine. The ruling comes from sources with WHO's International Agency for Research on Cancer. I've just read this part. Additional findings from the joint WHO and the Food and Agricultural Organization's Expert Committee on Food Additives, also known as the acronym JECFA, which is in the process of updating its aspartame risk assessment, or also expected. Donald Rumsfeld's hands and aspartame's approval. This is a name that I recognize. Let's continue to read on. So the JECFA has vouched for aspartame's safety for decades, stating since 1981 that it's safe when consumed with accepted daily limits. Safe and effective, I'm sure. It was 1981 when the U.S. Food and Drug Administration first approved aspartame, and at the time, the late Donald Rumsfeld, former U.S. Secretary of Defense, was chairman of G.D. Searle, aspartame's manufacturer, and was reportedly instrumental in its approval. Again, there's never collusion. This is very jarring and very taken aback that people could be coerced and corrupted or lobbied into passing things Anyways, at a 1980 FDA Board of Inquiry, the FDA had refused to approve aspartame due to its concerns that it could induce brain tumors. Wait a minute. So they had ethical ground for a hot minute, but then because we have this amazing lobbying culture, which is so great for democracy, it was somehow returned. But let's continue on. The late John Olney, a renowned neuroscientist who tried to prevent aspartame's approval, also wrote a letter to the Board of Inquiry in 1987 warning of aspartame's neurotoxicity, including the potential for brain tumors and damage to children's brains, as reported by Rense, which is spelled RENSE.com. Again, the shock continues to floodeth me. You're telling me that a neuroscientist, a renowned neuroscientist, brought this forward, these concerns. Wonder why he would do that. Wonder what his agenda might have been. Maybe he just doesn't like wealthy big corporations and was trying to sabotage them. I'm sure that happens often with scientists. They just don't want to see wealthy people getting wealthier and corporations getting more powerful. And so they deliberately come out with science that disproves their own findings in order to help bring these corporations down. Like, does that sound to you like that would happen in real life? Think about human nature and how it operates. Like, just think about it. Who would do that? None of us have the time to try to take down all of these individual big corporations that we know are so powerful and also too big to fail, if you will, to a degree. Nobody has the time for that or the power or the resources. We know that. So when somebody like a neuroscientist comes to you and has zero to gain from warning the FDA to not approve this because there are consequences down the line, why is the FDA not heeding that and instead choosing the side of the corporation that is going to gain from this monetarily, profit-wise, and is of course going to find a way to create science that backs them up? That to me is more in line with how human nature and the way that I understand it. But what do I know? I've only been on this earth for 40 some years. The FDA had actually banned aspartame based on its findings, only to have Cyril Chairman Donald Rumsfeld vow to call in its markers to get it approved. It's the denial of the reality that we live in, for me, that's really a tough pill to swallow. It's like we choose to bury our heads in the sand and act like there really isn't collusion, corruption, coercion happening in the world. And like lobbying actually benefits the average citizen in some capacity, when we're not the ones who are able to attend these, fancy behind closed door dinners that you have to pay, upwards of $50,000 for in order to get the ear of someone who has actual influence on the Capitol. Or maybe, we don't want to think about how we can't wine and dine, again, the people who have influence in the Capitol. And if you see me pointing over here, it's because I'm in the DMV area, which stands for Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, for those of you that are overseas. So you think that when you allow corporations, whether they be big tech or big agro or whomever, to come in, or just wealthy billionaires who have money to spend, when you allow these folks, to come in and say wine and dine politicians, or maybe whisk them off to St. Bart's on a private jet and offer them a luxury stay, or invite them to their homes at the Hamptons, if not all out, just gift them the home in the Hamptons, that you don't think that that's going to then trickle down to what laws are going to be passed and whom they favor or benefit? It's just not human nature. We're acting like we're not adults and we haven't seen these sort of patterns play out before. We're acting like there isn't a long history of mankind being quite amazing, generous, and wonderful, yes, but also being the exact opposite. We've had world wars, right? We've had genocides, dictators, maybe not in this country, but do you know what I mean? It's like, let's just act like it's just completely not within our wheelhouse to do anything that would be considered dark or shadow-like behavior, harmful. Okay, let me carry on. On January 21st, 1981, the day after Ronald Reagan's inauguration, Searle, the corporation, reapplied for the FDA approval that they needed to use aspartame in food sweetener, and Reagan's new FDA commissioner, Arthur Hayes Hull Jr., appointed a 5-person scientific commission to review the Board of Inquiry's decision. It soon became clear that the panel would uphold the ban by a 3-2 decision, but then Hull installed a 6th member on the commission, and the vote became deadlocked. He then personally broke the tie in aspartame's favor. Hull later left the FDA under allegations of improper. I'm sorry, I guess it's because I've not been live and I've not really had to speak in public in some time, although I still teach. But anyways, I'm struggling with my words today. So Hull later left the FDA under allegations of improprieties, served briefly as provost at New York Medical College, and then took position with Burstyn Marsteller, the chief public relations firm for both Monsanto and J.D. Searle. Good. Aspartame's risk link known for decades. Despite aspartame's approval, by 1987, a series of investigative reports raised concerns that the chemical's approval was mirrored by conflict of interest, poor quality industry-funded research, and revolving door relationships between the FDA and the food industry. By 1986, a team with the Department of I think this was misspelled psychiatry, I'm sure is what it's meant to say, at Washington University Medical School questioned whether increasing brain tumor rates had an aspartame connection. An exceedingly high incidence of brain tumors has been identified in aspartame-fed rats compared to rats not fed aspartame, they explained, adding, compared to other environmental factors, putatively linked to brain tumors, the artificial sweetener aspartame is a promising candidate to explain the recent increase in incidence and degree of malignancy of brain tumors. Then, in 2006, a study led by Dr. Morando Sofriti, a cancer researcher from Italy, who's the head of the European Ramazzini Foundation of Oncology and Environmental Sciences, found that even in low doses, animals were developing several different forms of cancer when fed aspartame. That year, the team concluded aspartame was a multi-potential carcinogenic agent, even at a daily dose of 20 milligrams per kilogram body weight, much less than the current acceptable daily intake, and stated a reevaluation of aspartame consumption was urgent and cannot be delayed. A 2007 follow-up study confirmed the finding of aspartame's multi-potential carcinogenicity, even at doses close to the acceptable daily intake for humans. Further, it also demonstrated that when lifespan exposure beginning in utero was assessed, aspartame's carcinogenic effects are increased. In 2010, Sofriti and colleagues again warned that aspartame was a carcinogenic agent in rats and mice. So this I actually even read. It wasn't this direct quote, but if you guys followed me whilst I was reading Paul Chek's book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, in the book, I read the same thing, which is artificial sweeteners are a huge no-no and should be, avoided at all cost because they do, in fact, lead to the big C. So we've been saying this. We have nothing to gain as, allies of humanity and health and wellness. Zero. It's not like we're getting paid by Mother Nature to say, hey, let's promote real sugar. Let's promote date sugar and coconut sugar, the things that you have provided us with from the soil. Do you think we're getting a check from that? I wish. But what we are getting is health and wellness. And that is more than enough. And for that, we are grateful. Research supporting aspartame's carcinogenicity is widespread. So these studies were only the beginning of the evidence showing aspartame's cancer-causing potential. In 2012, Harvard researchers published a study in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, which found In the most comprehensive long-term epidemiologic study, to our knowledge, to evaluate the association between aspartame intake and cancer risk in humans, we observed a positive association between diet soda and total aspartame intake and risks of NHL, non-Hodgkin lymphoma, a multiple myeloma in men, and leukemia in both men and women. Adding further concerns over aspartame safety, U.S. Right to Know reported in a 2014 commentary in American Journal of Industrial Medicine. The Maltoni Center research wrote that the studies submitted by J.D. Searle for market approval do not provide adequate scientific support for aspartame's safety. In contrast, recent results found lifespan carcinogenicity bioassays on rats and mice published in peer-reviewed journals and a prospective epidemiological study provided consistent evidence of aspartame's carcinogenic potential. A 2020 study further supports the Ramazzini Institute's original findings, revealing a statistically significant increase in total hematopoietic and lymphoid tissue tumors, HLTs also known as, and total leukemias and lymphomas in female rats exposed to aspartame. After the HLT cases reevaluation, the results obtained are consistent with those reported in the previous RI publication and reinforce the hypothesis that APM, aspartame, has leukemogenic and lymphomatogenic effects, the researcher explained. Again, in 2021, a review of the Ramazzini Institute data further confirmed that aspartame is carcinogenic in rodents. The researchers noted that their findings confirm the very worrisome finding that cancer risk in rodent offspring. They validate the conclusions of the original RI studies, RI standing for Ramazzini Institute. In response, they called on national and international public health agencies to re-examine aspartame's health risks, particularly prenatal and early postnatal exposures. Consuming artificial sweeteners increases cancer risks by 13%. In a 2022 study of 102,865 adults from France published in the PLOS Medicine, dietary intakes and consumption of artificial sweeteners were obtained and analyzed for associations with cancer evidence. The large-scale cohort study found that people who consumed higher levels of artificial sweeteners had a higher risk of overall cancer compared to non-consumers. Among the artificial sweeteners studied, aspartame and asulfame K in particular were associated with increased cancer risk, whilst aspartame intake was linked to higher risks of breast cancer and obesity-related cancers, including stomach, liver, colon, and rectal cancers. Specifically, total cancers risk increased by 13% amongst artificial sweetener consumers, whilst the risk of breast cancer rose by 22%, and the risk of obesity-related cancers increased by 15%. These results suggest that artificial sweeteners used in many food and beverage brands worldwide may represent a modifiable risk for cancer prevention. The researchers noted, explaining, experts have urged for a reevaluation by public health authorities of aspartame's role in cancer development based on previous and recent findings in animal models, in vitro studies, and to a lesser extent, human data. Findings about artificial sweeteners also raise questions regarding their potential role in carcinogenesis based in vivo studies. The WHO warns against artificial sweeteners for weight control. Aspartame's cancer link is especially concerning given its prevalence in diet, food, and drinks. Aspartame is used in 1,400 products in France. Excuse me, I had no idea. And more than 6,000 products around the globe. The chemical is commonly found in food products such as sugar-free gum, diet drink mixes, and sodas, reduced sugar condiments, and tabletop sweeteners, including Equal and NutraSweet. Its high level of sweetness, 200 times greater than sugar, and low calories makes it popular among people who want to make their drinks and meals sweeter without the calories of a comparable amount of sugar. But in addition to labeling the artificial sweetener as possibly carcinogenic, in May 2023, even the Beyond Corrupted, I'm actually reading that from the article, Even the Beyond Corrupted WHO released a guideline advising not to use non-sugar sweeteners, also known as NSS, for weight control because they don't offer any long-term benefit in reducing body fat in adults or children. Previously, the WHO conducted a systematic review and meta-analysis that revealed there is no clear consensus on whether non-sugar sweeteners are effective for long-term weight loss or maintenance, or if they're linked to long-term health benefits or intakes within the ADI. The systematic review also suggested potential undesirable effects from long-term use of NSS, such as increased risk of diabetes, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, and mortality in adults. Even cancer was called out in analysis, which included 283 studies, and found artificial sweeteners are linked to an increased risk of, get ready to jot this down, high fasting glucose, obesity, cardiovascular events, stroke, bladder cancer, type 2 diabetes, all-cause mortality, death from cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure, preterm birth, and possibly adiposity in offspring later in life. Further, according to the WHO study, mechanisms by which the NSS as a class of molecules might exert effects that increase risk for obesity and certain NCDs, non-communicable diseases, have been reviewed extensively and include interaction with extra-oral taste receptors, possibly with alteration of the gut microbiome. Increase. That's very interesting. Or I didn't mean to say increase, I meant to say interesting. With alteration of the gut microbiome. What I've been learning through my detoxification process is that really and truly the gut, in my opinion now, is the first brain and is truly that first, I guess you could say, barrier to true health, meaning that if you don't have gut health, you're not going to have any sort of health, period. Whether it be fertility health or mental health or musculoskeletal health. Does that make sense? That's just been what I've observed, but I'll share more with you all on that at a later time. Because sugars and all known SSS presumably elicit sweet taste through the TASIR, heterodimeric sweet taste receptor, which has been identified not just in the oral cavity, but in other glucose-sensing tissues, it is not surprising that such a group of vastly different chemical entities could be responsible for similar effects on health. Artificial sweeteners just simply aren't worth the risk. It's unclear why the WHO is suddenly warning the public about these products when they've been promoted by health officials for so long, but I've been advising against their use, speaking from Marcola's point of view as he wrote this article, but I've been advising against their use from the start. I also have been advising against their use since becoming a holistic health coach. Often there are emotional drivers behind cravings for sweets, which is why I have long recommended learning the emotional freedom techniques, tapping, and a psychological acupressure tool to overcome them. Beyond tackling your underlying emotions to stave off the urge to consume poisonous artificial sweeteners, consider taking a stash of ripe fruit that can naturally fill these cravings. Additionally, if you're eating a high-fat diet over 30%, then you will want to limit your carbs. But if it is below 30%, you are metabolically. If it is below 30%, then you are metabolically flexible, and you will likely increase your health by having a few hundred grams of ripe fruit. Optimize your omega-3 levels with high-quality products. If you don't regularly eat wild Alaskan salmon, herring, sardines, or anchovies, you're likely not getting enough healthy omega-3, specifically DHA and EPA. Replenish diminishing levels and support your heart, blood vessels, brain, mitochondria, and immune health, as well as an already healthy inflammatory response with this entourage of high-quality MSC certified omega supplements. Oh, okay, now he's advertising his own products, but and if you're interested in his products, I've not tried them myself, then I would urge you to go over to mocola.com, and I'm sure that you will be able to place an order. It does say here that if you use the promo code Omega20, again, this is not a sponsored video, and I'm not promoting these products as I've not tried them. There's a promo code, Omega20 is that code. So yeah, there's that. Now, going back to what I've been saying about how there's no corruption. Let's continue to defend these very powerful corporations. They're only looking out for our best interest. And if they say it's safe, for sure it is, even though historically, and I didn't make up the history books, guys, even though historically, it's a long list of things that we thought were safe: mercury, fluoride, x-rays, antibiotics. I digress. Just to kind of finish us off, yeah? I want to play this little clip just to remind you that big corporations are, in fact, looking out for us, and they are not criminals. And therefore, we should only be focusing on the criminals on the streets and not the white collar ones, because they are obviously of people of very high moral character and ground. Because why? Well, because they're in the designer suits and they own mansions and private jets. And so these kinds of people could not obviously be anything other than top-notch, law-abiding, life-affirming individuals who are vested in seeing us grow and thrive and want to share in their blessings and abundance of money and wealth and power. They're not wanting to keep us down here so that they can stay up here. Take a listen to this. Yeah, it's only about a minute long.
You were talking about the opioid crisis. The opioid crisis, started with the oxycodone. Now it's, fentanyl. But the same companies that got the FDA to lie to us about the addictiveness, lie to every doctor in this country about the addictiveness of oxycodone and get a whole generation addicted. Those are the same companies that make these, other products. And the 4 companies that make vaccines in this country, Merck, Sanofi, Glaxo, and Pfizer, have paid over $35 billion in criminal penalties over the past decade for lying to doctors, for falsifying science, for defrauding regulators. And we need to keep an eye on them. We can't just trust them. If they say it's a vaccine, we all trust it. We need to have actual science on it. And I think that's all I say. I don't want to get rid of vaccines. If you want to take a vaccine, you should be able to do it. We need good science, and that's all I've asked for.
That's all we've asked for. Good science. So if you're against that and you prefer the status quo of corruption and lies and all that good stuff, by all means, keep perpetuating this. And the rest of us who are, trying to do our best to communicate to you all that when something, even in its name, artificial, sweetener or artificial anything, simply is not comparable to Mother Nature, simply is not going to stand up to Mother Nature and whatever she has provided for us, because we are of her and from her, and eventually we return to her. It makes sense that life supports life, right? So, and like supports like. So we came from nature, we didn't come from artificial. So we're going to be supported by nature. And on that note, I'm going to sign off. Bye.